This Thursday, audiences are finally going to be able to see something that we've been waiting for a long time. Dune Part 2. It's not a sequel. As you are all aware, Dune Part 2 is the continuation of Dune Part 1. We have been waiting on this story to continue, and I am really excited about it. Come to think of it, there's not a whole lot in entertainment that I'm excited for. Dune Part 2 is the thing that I've been waiting on for a couple of years now, and I'm hyped. The early reviews are in, and you got to take all of the early reviews with a grain of salt. You know, there's certainly all over the place. There are people who don't like it, that are saying that it's still a slow walk in the sand. But overwhelmingly, the majority of the audience, or critical reviews rather, they are extremely positive. And you can see here, Esquire says that Dune Part 2 is the best sci-fi film of the decade. What's ironic about that is that I said the same thing about the first one. And I do believe that, I'm hopeful that I'll be agreeing with this one when I leave the theater this weekend. Esquire says, even better than the first film, the stakes are exponentially higher, the power struggles even more mythic, the on-screen world building richer and more exotically filigreed. Filigreed, a word that we don't typically see every day, for sure. Something exotic and delicate. Think gold, silver, precious metals, made into something very intricate. That's filigreed. And the visuals are even more dazzling. I didn't think this was possible. Cinelinx writes in and says Dune Part 2 is a grandiose triumph, and this is their review. And you see there the original poster, as the movie was originally slated for November 3rd. So what about Dune Part 2 is going to be different than the first one? We know that there's going to be more action. We know that the development of the character, Paul Atreides, is going to continue. And we also know that Denis Villeneuve has said that there is a big focus on both Lady Jessica and Zendaya for more development, telling the story through their lens. And there's some people who are unhappy about those words that Villeneuve has said. But Villeneuve has hearkened back to comments made by Frank Herbert, the creator of this world. He is the George Lucas of the Dune universe, no doubt about it. And he always talked about how people misunderstood the main character of Paul Atreides in an effort to rectify that after the first two Dune movies. Denis Villeneuve is making very strategic choices for this movie leading up to Dune Part 3, which will be Dune Messiah. Now, I'm not going to get into all the spoilers there. Many of you viewers know what happens to Paul, knows what happens to Chani, knows what happens to Paul's son. Is that a spoiler? I don't think that's a spoiler. But yeah, the story is going to be an epic tale. I cannot wait to get into it. But that's not it. Finally, a big, huge blockbuster movie gets it right and returns to practical effects. Reporting here, IGN says Dune Part 2 cast on how practical effects make this universe more real than ever before. And this was at the IGN FanFest 2024. And here's some of their comments. Timothee Chalamet shared with IGN that being in the driver's seat of a massive creature, the sandworm, that the rig was as violent and properly terrifying at times, and he admits that it was worth it in the end. Chalamet said, we had an entire worm unit dedicated to that sequence in the film. It was like a separate movie going on where the massive resources of this film in that unit were dedicated to getting what's ultimately a 3-minute or 4-minute sequence in a movie shot over the course of 3 to 4 months with a shot list that covered a giant wall. It was just extraordinary, and it couldn't have been done on a green screen. It would have been such a shame if it had. Florence Pugh, who plays Princess Irulan, echoed the sentiment and said getting ready in costume, hair, and makeup and walking on the practical sets created by the talented crew transported the cast to this faraway world and let them become their characters. Rebecca Ferguson, who plays Lady Jessica, says everything you use, everything you see, and your immediate surroundings with this film is practical. Stellan Skarsgård says it does something to you. Talking about the practical sets, he says, you feel the fantastic architecture and that my buildings would have pleased Hitler or Mussolini. It gives you an enormous feeling. And they go on and on and on in the article about the use of practical effects, which is a great win for the fans. Now, Dune fans are at war with fans of Ghostbusters. What's that about? It's about popcorn buckets. You could get your awesome Dune popcorn bucket with the sandworm. You stick your hand inside the sandworm's mouth to get your popcorn. But fans of Ghostbusters are saying that their popcorn bucket is the best. I don't know. Even though I'm really excited for Dune Part 2, I love my guy, Slimer. Thank you, Debbie. And you guys know how news works, and especially controversial news where shots are being fired by people about other people. This one tends to make its rounds every few months. It always comes up. We did a video on this, I don't even know how long ago, 2 years ago or something, and it continues to get comments today. People are fascinated by it. That Frank Herbert always thought Star Wars was a Dune ripoff. And this is just a way to keep the conversation going, I guess. People are always very interested in it. You could see Frank Herbert's comments when he was originally asked about Star Wars prior to even seeing it himself. He said, I will try hard not to sue. I have no idea what book of mine it fits, but I suspect it may be Dune, since in that I had a Princess Aliyah, and the movie has a Princess Leia. And I hear there is a sandworm carcass and hood dwellers in the desert, just like in Dune. Well, that really doesn't make Star Wars a Dune copy, does it? In a 1985 interview, Frank Herbert said, Lucas has never admitted that they copied a lot of Dune, and I'm not saying they did. I'm just saying there are 16 points of identity between the book Dune and Star Wars. Now, you've had stat. What is that? It's 16 times 16 times 16 times over 1. The odds against that being coincidence, there aren't that many stars in the universe. So in 1985, Frank Herbert was definitely saying that Dune was copied by George Lucas and Star Wars. But I think the word copied really shouldn't be used there. It's obvious that, while Star Wars was made, in George Lucas's own words, for 12-year-old boys and their fathers, something that they could share and enjoy together, Dune was a franchise made specifically for the adult. The underlying themes, the undertones of the story, there's so much going on. Dune is an intellectual journey, for sure. Did you know that Frank Herbert actually took a shot at Star Wars and George Lucas in his second-to-last book that he wrote called Heretics of Dune? This is a passage right out of the book, guys. From the most ancient times, the knowledgeable had preferred to surround themselves with fine woods rather than with mass-produced artificial, that's a key word, materials known as polystyrene, polaz, or pormabat. As far back as the Old Empire, there had been a pejorative label for the small rich family's miner arising from the knowledge of the rare wood's value. He's a 3PO, they said, meaning that such a person surrounded himself with cheap copies made from D-Class A substances. D-Class A meaning being put down or lowering yourself in social status or society. Woo! Did Frank Herbert just say that Star Wars is not only a copy, but it is just lower than, just something that's not original and basically fake? And the last thing I want to show you guys is that the son of Frank Herbert himself, Brian Herbert, who also penned many Dune books, posted this on Twitter. I saw Dune Part 2 at a private studio screening, and it is gratifying to see my father's story told with such great care. When the movie is combined with Dune Part 1, it is by far the best film interpretation of Frank Herbert's classic novel Dune that has ever been done. Truly am grateful that Brian Herbert feels fulfilled by this process and what Denis Villeneuve has given us and created. I hope that Denis Villeneuve gives us a great part 2, as I'm going to go see it, and we'll be reviewing it here on the channel, and that he ties it off and ends it with an incredible science fiction trilogy. And I hope that Dune takes its place at the forefront of science fiction in entertainment today, and that we get more and more of it as the years goes by. Let me know in the comments what you think. Are you going to go see it? And we appreciate it very much, guys. We are UR Echo Base Network. See you on the next one.